Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia SBDC's webinar series, Google and Beyond, Marketing and Managing on the Web. This series is designed to take a look at tools and techniques to help small businesses take their business to the next level on the web. Today's webinar is Managing Email Overload. All of our Google and Beyond webinars are presented by Ray Sidney Smith of W3 Consulting, a web and digital strategy consultancy firm for small businesses. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type those questions into the question window, and Ray will do his best to answer them. Without further ado, here's Ray Sidney Smith.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you to the Virginia SBDC for having me here for the Google and Beyond webinar series, Marketing and Managing on the Web. Today's topic is managing email overload, and as Tracy said, we will be taking questions as we move our way through the webinar this morning. If you have any questions after the webinar, feel free to go ahead and tweet at me at W3 Consulting, hashtag it Beyond Google. I'll be happy to answer questions out there on the Twitter sphere. So this symbol has come to represent email in its sort of many varieties. And such a simple symbol, I think it's quite a beautiful symbol, has also created many struggles for business owners all over the United States, I'm sure. Managing email overload is a topic near and dear to my heart because I happen to be a productivity geek, but as well as being a small business owner, it's really important to be able to manage email effectively. You know, email itself didn't start to become broadly adopted by business and consumers until the technology known as Internet SMTP, which stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, came into effect in the mid-1990s. And so all of this technology, the schema that you see here on the screen provided by wikimedia.org, is really simply summed up in the sense that it quickly and easily sends digital mail to you. And so we know that today there's 144 billion email messages that are actually transmitted on a daily basis. 144 billion, just think about that. And so we have no dearth of email messages being transmitted throughout the United States, certainly because of that. And we sort of have to pay attention to ways in which we can go ahead and manage that. So today what I'd like to do is to discuss getting your inbox to zero. If you have an email that's full of email messages right now, we want to be able to take that email and get it down to a zero inbox. That is the principle behind your email inbox not being a task list. If you're working from your email as a task list, then you're in effect not using it as an inbox. You don't use your mailbox outside your home as a task list. You know, you don't walk out there and look in it to see whether or not you have to do your next thing to do for your business out there. So why would you use your email inbox as a task list in that same way? Same way you don't use a voicemail message inbox for being a task list. You should have a separate task list outside of your inbox for those things. So getting your email inbox to zero is important. 2 is managing emails, what I call responsively and responsibly. We want to be able to manage the influx of email messages both responsively and responsibly, and that means managing the flow, the workflows, as well as the flow of influx and outflux of email messages. And then, of course, developing a good email culture, and we'll talk about how we can change the communication culture, the communication paradigm around email so that you can be much more effective in your business, okay? So we'll just start off with the fact that when you're getting to email inbox zero, okay, the idea of inbox zero is to get your email messages down to zero in the David Allen or Getting Things Done methodology, which is Getting Things Done is a book by David Allen I probably talked about on prior webinars, but it's a productivity methodology, and inbox zero was sort of coined in that world as being getting your inbox to being empty just about every 24 to 48 hours, okay? And that's what your goal should be, is to get your email to about that 0 point every 24 to 48 hours. But like with all things, Rome wasn't built in a day, and quite frankly, your email won't get to zero in a day, okay? So there are ways in which you can do that, and I'll talk about that, but the reality is that if you have an overflowing inbox, it's not going to get to zero today. But the hope is that you'll be able to work slowly and steadily to get yourself to a point where you can bring yourself to zero comfortably over the next couple of days or weeks, depending upon how much email you actually do have. Okay, so so here we are, looking at the problem. Okay, and now let's talk about what we can do in terms of solutions for it. So the first thing we'd like to do is to talk about some tools, and I'm going to show you some of the tools. But first, we really want to stop the influx, and primarily the influx. We know that somewhere between 60 and 80% of email comes into our inboxes from those 144 billion email messages a day, and we want to be able to stop the influx of those emails right at the source, okay? And that means unsubscribing from any email newsletters that you don't read and or cannot read, and you have to take a sort of earnest, honest look at your time and see whether or not you can read that material. I know it's wonderful to think that you want to, and you want to consume that material, but you may not have the time, especially if you're a startup entrepreneur or you're running a small business and you're still a solopreneur. You may not have the time to be able to actually read those messages. So you're going to have to go ahead and unroll yourself from those messages, unsubscribe or whatnot. So here's a couple of tools that I like that help me sort of get through and delete some of those messages before they even get to my inbox. So the first service that I'm going to talk about is called SaneBox. It is one that is lauded by many of the people who are in the productivity community. And what it does is it allows you to be able to not only smart filter away messages. So it basically has this wonderful algorithm that goes in and looks at all of your email messages. And this works in Gmail and several other services. I think Outlook.com and Yahoo, I think it also works in. And so it goes into your system. I'm sorry, SaneBox actually works with any email. That's its purport being. So it works with any email. You install it. I think it's like $5 a month, but you can try out the free trial to at least get to inbox 0. And so it goes ahead and it determines the importance of your email. It has this wonderful algorithm, and then it shuffles them all out of your inbox fairly quickly and easily, and then allows you to be able to organize things. It has some other interesting features, and it also has the ability to go ahead and just drag an email into an unsubscribe area, and it goes ahead and disappears. The email, you don't get those email messages anymore. They basically handle that all in the background. Very, very interesting service, very effective for being able to get a lot of email quickly organized and filtered out of your inbox and out of sight. Okay? Next up is a service called Unroll.me or Unroll.me, and it allows you to be able to not just unsubscribe from the messages that you're receiving, but if you're receiving any other messages that are basically mass email, they may be email newsletters, they may be digests of other kinds of services, maybe email forums that you're receiving email messages from. It goes ahead and takes all of those email messages and it bundles them up into what it calls the roll-up. And so on a daily basis, I get what's called the roll-up, thrown into my email inbox, and it's just one email for all of the other things that I've subscribed to. So now the email messages that are in my inbox are from real people whom I need to message, whom I need to, respond to, and the one email is Unroll Me, and so I can read the Unroll Me digest, see what information I'd like to look at, pop out there and look at it if I need to. Then I can tell Unroll Me, you know what, I want to receive this email, so please send me, this email whenever it comes in. And now that email message for that one specific subscription will come into my inbox. But it can quickly and easily grab a lot of email messages before they show up in your inbox, and that way it's sort of beautifully digested for you right there for you. So I really like Unroll.me. By the way, all of these links that I'm talking about today, I'm not putting them on screen because I've bundled them up and put them into a Google Drive document. So at the end of the webinar, you'll see a link to it, and if Tracy would like to, she can send that out to you all if necessary. But the link is up on one of the last slides to all of these services. So don't worry about missing something. It's tracked for you. If you're using Gmail, and the next couple of items that I'll be talking about are Gmail-oriented, Gmail has now the unsubscribe option listed at the top of every thread. So there's actually an unsubscribe link that is right there if you're in Gmail or using Google Apps. If you are in an email message and you don't want to receive it anymore as a subscription, you can just click on the unsubscribe, and it does the work for you. Really, really powerful tool in there. Probably not the greatest tool for email marketers, but perhaps it is a great tool for email marketers, but because it helps clean up the idea of having a bad list. Anyway, the point being is that as a receiver of email, a recipient, you can go ahead and unsubscribe using the service built right directly within Gmail and Google Apps now. Really fantastic. This is a really great tool that I happen to use myself and love. It's called Email Game, and it's you go to emailga.me. But Email Game is a tool created by a company called Baden, and Baden has developed this game. And so if you have a Gmail or Google Apps account, you log into it just by typing in your email address and then authenticating, and you play this game. So you log in, and so I log in with my personal email, my personal Gmail account. I log in, and it opens up a board, and the leaderboard shows how many messages I go ahead and trash, that is trash, respond to, or reference file, take action, and then edits or follow up. I'm sorry, file. And so, those messages that you're going ahead and managing, replying to them and getting them out of your inbox, you get rewarded for doing it in a sort of fast-paced game. So it's a really fun little tool for being able to do that. I happen to really like it. It's a great way to, take 10 or 15 email messages and process through them pretty quickly. And so the email game can be really fun. At least on a personal level, I like it. Next up is a tool called Power Inbox, powerinbox.com, works with Gmail, Yahoo, and Outlook, and they have a tool called Remove Me. So removeme.co. Up in the top right-hand corner of the screen, you can see the Remove Me button. If you click on that Remove Me button, it takes you to a website. You install Power Inbox into your Gmail, Yahoo, or Outlook. It works on the Chrome browser, I believe. So you have to use the Google Chrome browser, but Google Chrome is free. So you just install the Google Chrome browser, log into it, and then Remove Me goes ahead into your inbox and goes ahead and removes all of the unwanted mail so that you don't have to worry about it. Again, it has a very similar mechanism that SaneBot has to go through and look at the email and tell you what's important, what's not important, and kick the rest to the curb. Okay? Really, really great tool. So I like Power Inbox. All right. So those are just some tools to get you through your inbox and get you to zero. Okay? The next thing that you can do to getting yourself to inbox zero that I really think can be effective is what's called the email nuclear option. Or at least that's what I call it. I call it the nuclear option. All right? And so the nuclear option is basically taking everything in your inbox and looking at it and saying, okay, I'm not going to be able to deal with this right now, and I need an inbox zero. I need the inbox to see zero so that I can handle what's going on. Okay? So what you do is you write an email message to everyone in your contacts that are important to you, and you use a blanket email, and you just write to them and say, hi everybody, I am declaring email bankruptcy. So if you sent me an email recently that was really important, please send it to me again. But otherwise, I'm basically deleting or archiving all the messages in my inbox. Okay? So what you then do is you just highlight all, select all in your email inbox, and you either delete or archive all of your email messages or move them all out of your inbox to a file folder. Okay? And what that does is it immediately sort of declares bankruptcy, like it sort of says, and everything's gone out of your inbox, and you're starting clean. Okay, so if you have probably 2,000 to 6,000 email messages in your inbox, that is probably the point at which you want to think about declaring email bankruptcy and using the nuclear option. Okay, at that point, you can go ahead and institute some sort of better practices as it relates to that. The one particular practice that I like is what I call the oldest and the newest, okay? And this was actually given to me by a friend. And what she does is she always handles the oldest day's email and the newest day's email. So she without email bankruptcy, you have an inbox with several hundred email messages potentially. And what you're going to do is you're gonna respond and archive all the messages for today. That means you're staying current. Okay? You can even do today and yesterday. okay, even today and yesterday, and then the oldest day's email, okay? So what you're always doing is you're dealing with today and yesterday, which means you're staying current, and then going ahead and then making sure that you're going backward and slowly but surely catching up with the email that's backlogged. Again, the point is that Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm sort of muddling the metaphor there. But the point is, overflow, out the gate, there should be an ability for you to go ahead and slowly but surely work your way backwards. So maybe you do the today and yesterday and the last two oldest days if you think that's going to help you faster. But the point is that you're not dealing with any of them right now. You're piecemealing through maybe today's emails and you consistently find yourself overflowing with email. Well, 2 emails a day in 300 days, let's say 200 business days a year, you'll have gone through a good 400 email messages, okay? And those 400 email messages can be cleared up pretty quickly. You can also go through and highlight and select. You can search and filter for other email messages that you just know are garbage and highlight, select, and delete those. So, through some search and filtering, you can reduce that email message down to really just the email messages that require a response. I see that there's a question.
Yeah, the question was, is there a way to do an email bankruptcy but keep all of the starred, flagged, important ones?
I'm going to guess that you're talking about your particular email system. I'm outside of a particular email system, I would say yes. They're almost in every email system today, unless you're using a system before 1995. You should be able to sort and filter, search and filter, select, and then deselect those. Specifically in Gmail, which is probably what, in Google Apps Mail, which is what I'm most familiar with, and then, of course, Microsoft is my next most familiar, you are able to search for all items that are in your inbox, and then using the minus sign. So in the search field, you would put minus, and then is, starred, S-T-A-R-R-E-D, literally the word starred, and you can basically select all of those but the ones, or search and find all of the ones that are in your inbox but not starred, all of the ones that are in your inbox but not important, okay? So you put the minus sign, is, important. The minus sign basically makes the is not, and therefore the search will then be, in, inbox, space, minus sign, is, starred, space, minus sign, is, important. And that will find all the messages in the inbox that are not starred and not important. So you can use that search functionality within the Gmail advanced search functionality. And then in Outlook, there is an advanced search function. Depending upon which Outlook version you're using, you just go into the advanced search functions and you can actually tag those to search, filter out the ones that are important to you. You might, decide the ones that are related to a particular client are going to stay in your inbox. Those that are, anything else are not. And then go ahead and just delete those. So yeah, there are abilities to do that. Okay. So anyway, the point behind the oldest and newest is to go ahead and start staying current with getting your inbox to 0 at least for today. Perspective is to get your email inbox to 0 for today's messages and maybe yesterday, if you have some overflow from the day before. You get into the office, there's email from yesterday from people who may have sent it after office hours. You get into the office, you want to clean up yesterday and today, and then of course go back and clean up the oldest day or oldest 2 days worth of email messages, and then consistently doing that as a habit. Tracy, was there another question?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, good. All right. So moving right along, I found this wonderful quote from the inimitable Martha Stewart. She says, "My daughter emails me. When your daughter starts to email you instead of talk to you, it's horrible. You cannot forget human communication." And I think that Martha really sums it up here in the sense that we have to remember that we're communicating with other people, and that when we're dealing with email newsletters and other kinds of things that are not humans, we should relegate those to a different status. And that really means understanding how to manage workflow. And whether or not email is actually part of your workflow, I don't think it's not a part of really anyone's workflow today in society. We've just gotten so, in business culture that is, we've gotten so used to the idea of using email messages, and so it's just a part of our culture. And so now we have to figure out how to manage that workflow within our system. So just remember, though, if you're communicating with humans, email to email, just remember that this is human communication, and sometimes a little bit more humane communication is better than not. So the first thing that I like to talk about when I talk about managing email, managing the flow, is really the idea of managing email responsively and responsibly, okay? And so under the responsively umbrella, the first thing that I like to sort of make note of is to set aside blocks of time to process email, okay? And this takes me back to what I said at the beginning. Email isn't a task list, okay? That means that if you have things to do, you need to figure out how to trigger yourself to get to those actions without your email, okay? So an email message comes into your inbox at any hour of the day. Does that mean that you sit there staring at your inbox waiting for email to show up? No, you have a life to live, you have a business to run, and therefore you cannot let email manage your time. You must manage your time and let email be a part of your communications cadre, of communications tools, but it cannot be the thing that drives you. You drive, you're in the driver's seat, you take care of the email when it comes, but on your time, okay? You decide what they are. For me, I set aside 3 2-hour blocks of my day to handle email when I'm in a heavy email period. When I'm in lesser periods, I might only have 15 to 20 minutes at a time between workshops or seminars that I might be giving, as well as a training or client meeting. So I'll put in those time frames based on what time I know I have and how much email I anticipate getting in a particular time frame. So you can tell, in June or July, I'm going to get a whole bunch of email. But when November, December comes around, the email will die down a little bit. So in those time frames, I know that my days are going to be structured with at least X amount of time to be able to do that. One good rule of thumb is don't check email when you walk into the office first thing in the morning. It's best for you to be able to plan out your day if you haven't done that the day before, and to deal with all of the other issues that are more pressing and more important to your business. Come to the email after you've had a little bit of time to really figure out what you're going to do today. Because you can read an email message, and it can throw your entire day off when you've already planned to do what you need to do to make your business successful. So don't make the email manage you. Go ahead and decide what you're going to do before you open up that inbox for the day. Spend that 5 or 10 minutes and say, this is what I plan to do today, and whatever's in my inbox isn't going to control me. I'm going to control what's in my inbox so that I can be that, okay? And going back to the getting things done methodology and having a productivity system, really all that means is having the ability to trigger you to do stuff outside of that. So, there could be a paper Post-it, it could be a pad and pen, it could be a digital task manager or a reminders app on your phone. But you're going to go ahead and have those tasks outside of your inbox. So an email comes in and it has a task associated with it. Great. What you're going to do is you're going to write that task down in your system on a piece of paper, notepad, all centralized. All your tasks are going to go there. And now your email, whether it needs a response or not, moves out of your inbox. It gets filed away. Maybe it goes into a folder for the client. Maybe it just gets archived because you can pull it back up and respond to it if you need to. But there's no reason to leave it in the inbox because all it's going to do is it's fester there. If you're not going to deal with it right then and there within that 2 minutes, you probably should get it out of the inbox and process it to a task list, because you're going to have to look at that email again. You're going to have to touch it twice and 3 times and 4 times before you get back to responding to the person with whatever deliverable you were planning. It's a huge waste of time to keep looking at that same email over and over again. And it blocks your view. If you want to focus on processing, you don't want a whole bunch of email sitting in front of you. You just want one. All right, so set aside blocks of time to process email. Try to make sure that you go ahead and budget time, knowing that the influx of email is going to be this amount every day. It takes me about this amount of time to go ahead and process and go ahead and do that. So that's being responsive in the best way. One tactic is to respond to people and say, receive the message, and I'll get back to you at this particular time if there's a deliverable that's necessary. Sometimes I don't have time to be able to respond to email substantively, and so I have a block set of text that says, I received your email. Thank you so much for sending it. Here goes some basic information you can find on my website. That's in the FAQs. These are the top questions people ask. And if this requires a substantive response, I will get back to you on, and then it has a blank in there. And I type in manually when I'll be able to get back to them, because I looked in my calendar and I can see, okay, it's going to be another 2 days or 4 days before I can get back to this person. I don't want them to stress out thinking that I haven't gotten their message or not received their message. And so therefore now they know when I'm going to be able to receive that. So if you want to go to that effect of being more responsive than not, you can go ahead and do that. Let them know that you've received the message. Now you can take down the action that you have to do outside of your inbox, however you track your tasks, and now the email goes away into the archive. Okay, file it away and that's out of your inbox. Really, really great way to do it. Next up is being responsible. Okay, and responsible email management is really about developing a great communication culture, which leads me into sort of the next set of slides. But really what you want to be able to do is think about that culture has really defined email. Email is just a technology. And so we really have to figure out how we've been using email today, and then figure out ways in which we can start to correct it, figure out ways in which we can make email a more useful part of our lives, as opposed to being the bane of our existence. You know, some people get anxiety. There are all sorts of disorders now around people when they receive emails. They get anxiety attacks and other things like that. You should not get anxiety when it comes to receiving communications in general. So, you know, work to have a good culture, and you'll be able to do that. One of the things that I really like to hone in on, again, is that Rome wasn't built in a day. And so just as poor email culture was instituted over time, just as your inbox overflowed with material over time, you aren't going to be able to change the email culture overnight. Even as the owner of the small business, you won't be able to say today, this is how we're going to do everything going forward, and that's the way it's going to be. The heart and mind will change overnight. Okay? It's going to take time, and that means instituting policies that help email change over time. But really, you're going to have to do this in a very slow and methodical fashion, and really by modeling. And modeling being doing and using email effectively and responsibly, as I said before, so that people see it and continue to use the tools and technology in the appropriate way that it should be, instead of not. And I can't stress this more than I am. You know, I can't stress enough that the fact that we tend to instill habits and then use those habits over and over just reinforce, you know, they reinforce the habit. Keep doing it, and then the habit gets stronger. Well, to undo the habit, you have to do a new habit. But that means you have to overcome the inertia of the old habit plus installing the new habit. So don't get frustrated by the fact that you may not be able to overcome one particular email issue overnight, especially if you've had many years with your staff, with your vendors, your clients, and stakeholders doing something. You're gonna get pushback. You know, people are gonna be like, why can't we email all this stuff? You know, why isn't there? Why are you telling me there's a better way? Why are you telling me to pick up the phone, for instance, than to do whatever? You know, I tend to talk about email isn't always faster, and the reason email isn't always faster is that despite the implication that email being digital means that it's a speedier form of communication, you would be wrong to presume that. Email is a human-powered communication platform. Going back to Martha Stewart, her daughter emailed her, and she feels like there's a lack of human connection now because of that. Many times, email being a human communication platform, we have what is considered sort of what's out of sight is out of mind, and then can be often ignored. And so the reality is that you send an email to somebody, you have no control over that person's response to you, whether that be a staff member, a client, colleague, or whatever. The email goes out there. It's off and running. And just like a piece of mail, postal mail, you send it and they receive it. And now it's up to them to be able to respond. A phone call or text message today can provide faster synchronous communication than email almost 90% of the time. So in that slim 10% of the time, your communication culture needs to promote the appropriate use of email. So when is it best to use email? You need to write it down, let your people know. people are, of course, your family, friends, staff, vendors, clients, and stakeholders. So we know email isn't always faster. So what are those areas in which email is faster, and or the most appropriate means for being able to do that? Those include sometimes sending documents. Right? If it's appropriate to send the documents through email, we would do that. And I'll talk about in the next item when you shouldn't. So you really want to think about, am I sending a large amount of information that needs to be tracked? Am I sending multiple subject items in the same email? We don't want to do that. We want to send separate emails with different subjects for different items. That way people can scan through and deal with those things individually. People have a tendency to respond when they have to do as little processing as possible. The more complex, that is, the less simple an item is, the easier it is. The more complex, the less complex, the more simple it is, the easier it is for me to be able to respond to that message. That means if you send me an email message and it has 12 different line items with responses that are necessary, your email isn't faster there, okay? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to get to point number 8, and I can't respond to it. It's going to require me to have to go find 4 and 5 source materials to be able to get that back to you. Maybe you have a deliverable in number 11 where I have to actually put together a document or find a document for you. That's going to take me time. And by the time I get to 12, someone else has thrown a fire in front of me. I've got to go deal with that fire, and your email message then falls to the wayside for another 3 days. Okay? So remember that your email needs to be effectively written when it comes to what you want. Okay? So remember, if you are going to do it, just think about what are the areas where email is going to be faster. Okay, that's when we use email. Otherwise, email should not be used in these areas. And that means a telephone call, or if you're comfortable text messaging with that particular party, those are going to be ways in which you get back and forth information in a much faster and a much more competent way. Okay, so email isn't always faster. Next up are the bane of my existence, attachments. People send attachments all the time. And more often than not, people call me telling me that they can't get attachments sent because files are becoming bigger and bigger today. If you have a large graphics presentation or something like that, I've set up my service to be able to send very large attachments, but most email services are not set up and designed that way. So what you want to do is don't send them without thinking, why are you sending this attachment, okay? If you're sending the attachment because you're just sending it because someone asked for it, that's great. Is this in a more centralized place? For instance, if you keep sending the same attachment to people over and over again, it actually takes time for a message to send, for instance, and you watch the thing sending. Everybody watches the email, send when it goes off and running, and you watch the little ticker as it moves up to 100% to send, or whatever it might be. That's time out of your day that you're wasting. You need to think about why you're sending that attachment and whether or not that attachment can be put someplace else. You can put those documents, if it's a public document, say it's a brochure, or it's some information, you can lead those people to your website. And in many ways, you can take a lot of the attachments in your business and generalize them, and therefore it wouldn't be specific to that particular person, and put that up on your website, or put that in an intranet where only certain people have access to it. Centralize the documents with Google Drive and Dropbox, etc. Those kinds of cloud-based services, and we have a prior webinar that talks about these cloud storage services, they allow you to collaborate. So now instead of, you send an attachment to 3 or 4 people, okay, that you're working on a document with. Well, now that you've sent that document off to them, there are now 3 or 4 or 5 different versions, the ones that showed up in each one of their inboxes. I make an edit here, you make an edit there, Sally makes an edit over there, and now they all send you back their edited version. And guess what? You have to look at each one of the documents and, and review all of those. Better yet, maybe the file attachment size is too large, and so Sally emails you and says, I tried to send you this attachment 4 times, but my email server, my outbound server won't let me send it to you. How do I get it to you now? And now you have to waste the time of figuring out how to get that email attachment to her phone. Stop that productivity nightmare at the beginning of it. If the document needs to be collaborated on, figure out the collaboration tool, put it in that collaboration tool, and then your email is going to say, here goes a link and whatever the accessibility credentials are necessary to get to it, the login credentials. This is where we're going to manage this document. And that email has no attachment. Everyone is happier because they can look at one centralized document and work on it, and you're happier because you didn't have the nightmare of having to deal with potentially 20 to 40 to 60 minutes of time just in dealing with email issues, okay? So think about when you're going to send attachments, and certainly don't send them without thinking. I mean, you know, it's just giving a little bit of thought to why you're attaching a document to an email, and think, can this be centralized? And is there a benefit to it being centralized? If so, then an attachment is necessary. This leads me into the next item, which is forwarding email. So many times people forward attachments or just forward email newsletters. Thought you might be interested in. That could be really great if you're trying to just have a touch point with a customer or a client. But when it comes to internal projects and workflow, developing a good email culture is understanding that just forwarding messages are not always the appropriate means to do that. My litmus test for it is, would you photocopy and mail this particular item? So the example is, I get a great email message in my inbox. In yesteryear, that would mean that somebody handed me a piece of paper, or I received a piece of mail, or I looked at a newspaper and found a really great article. Those are things that I would copy, put in an envelope, write a note on it, and mail to someone. That was really the only way prior to fax. So if I wouldn't be willing to photocopy and mail and or fax that particular item, then why would I want to forward that item? Okay? So give yourself that moment of thought. Is this something that I would take the physical energy of to photocopy and mail or photocopy and fax? Otherwise, don't send it. And it'll save everybody a whole heck of a lot of grief on the other end. Because then they'll say, well, you know, if Ray sent this to me, then it must have a great deal of importance to him for me to have it. There's something about it that made him think to send it to me. And that gets everybody else trusting your information more, which means that when you send an email, whether they have attachments or they are forwarded messages, people know, you know what, this person is discerning about sending email, so I should open it. But if you send a ton of forwarded messages, people start to get numb to it, and then they stop reading the messages. So really think discriminately about what email messages you forward so that people know to trust your email messages are of quality when they do open them. Next up is the horrible BCC and CC mayhem, okay? So the CC and BCC mayhem. For those who don't know, CC stands for carbon copy. In the old days, you write a letter on a typewriter, and there was a piece of carbon between that and the next sheet of paper, and you type really hard, and you could get a copy out, and potentially two copies out if you had two pieces of carbon paper between three other sheets. And you could then send a copy to two other people, one to two other people. And the letter would say, CC so-and-so, you know, if you have to be sending that to. The carbon copy has moved its way into the digital age through the CC. So you have the two-line, two is for anyone who needs to read and receive the email message and have action associated with it. Copying or carbon copying people means that there's no action, but they need to know about it, okay? And then there's the BCC. The BCC is really to be used in very rare occasions. And these rare occasions include when you are trying to copy someone on a message, but you don't want to expose their email address to the other recipient. So if you're having negotiations, for instance, with a potential client, and you're talking with other colleagues about that potential client, but you don't want to expose that client's email address without their permission, you might BCC their email address, but you should disclose in the body of the email that that person is being copied. So by blind copy, so-and-so is receiving this email message. Should be in the body of the email message. Otherwise, the BCC shouldn't really be used. It's a rare circumstance that you should not disclose that someone is receiving a message. Just think about it, how you would feel if someone were to take a letter, a personal private letter that they wrote to you, and copy that and mail that to 6 of your best friends. Well, you would feel somewhat taken aback by the communication gap, by the lack of etiquette. So don't use BCC in that way. I've seen many people get all sorts of reprimand in their corporate environments mostly, but in their business, and professional reputations being tarnished because they BCC people. That information gets out to other folks, because it's very easy to then forward an email message that you were BCC'd, and now that goes off and running. And now, of course, people beyond just the person who is planning to receive it knows that it made its way around, and you don't want to get caught in that. So copy for people who need no action but need to know about it. BCC very, very, judiciously when it comes. BCC very limitedly when you want to let people know that they're, are getting information but don't want to disclose their actual email address to the public. All right. Next up is the reply all apocalypse, okay, or what's known as the email storm. And this really leads back to number 5, which is, many times you copy a bunch of people on an email message because you think that everybody needs to know about that particular message, when in reality, not everyone needs to know about that message, okay? So really think about this long and hard before you put a bunch of people in copy or the to or copy line, okay? To is for anyone who needs action. Copy is for anyone who just needs to know. But the reply apocalypse happens, or an email storm happens, when one person replies all to a message, and then someone else replies all to that message, and all of a sudden, there are hundreds of messages showing up in your email inbox because you copied a bunch of people, and everyone now is, of course, trying to make do with all of the various pieces of information that are flying around. It's one of the things we have to remember. Should I be more discerning about that? Even to the effect of what I do sometimes is I will write at the end of the email or at the beginning of the email message, please do not reply all. Reply to me and I will summarize all of the messages and then send one email to everybody. And that way the discussion is, especially when it's just a function of what are your ideas about this particular concept. People can individually brainstorm, individually reply, and then you can consolidate all of those messages, put them into one email address, one email message, and send them to everybody. And now people have gotten 2 email messages from you as opposed to potentially 30 or 40 email messages for just the idea of giving ideas. Where would you like to go for lunch? Well, all of a sudden, 100 email messages later, people don't even want to go to lunch now. You don't want to do that. You want to just be able to avoid the reply all apocalypse, okay? Next, and finally, of the 7 sort of ways to develop good email culture that I've set up here is email charter and the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 sentences. So I'm going to take you out of here and show you what those are. So the email charter is this really wonderful, hold on a second here, this really wonderful tool that was set up here. It's 10 rules to reverse the email spiral. And this person who set this up, I'm not sure who did, but you go to emailcharter.org, and right here on here it gives you sort of 10 rules. Respect recipient time, slow or short or slow is not rude. So let people reply on their own time. Don't go crazy about getting responses immediately. Sort of the BlackBerry or the Crackberry syndrome of standing there with your email in your hand and wanting messages back and forth as though you're on the phone with them. Celebrate clarity using status categories right there in the subject line. And in the email notes, I'll be attaching this. It's a Wikipedia article, and it's a list of email subject abbreviations, and it goes through all the various basic ones. Re meaning in reply to, forward, FW or FWD, or forward of a message, FYI, which is just for your information, meaning that no one needs to reply to that email. Many times people will write back, thank you, or something like that as a reply to the message. I sometimes write in no response necessary, NRN in the subject line, so that I know that, yes, I know that you're thankful. I know you're grateful. You don't need to send me a message that says thank you. I understand that you're thankful. We're going to just move on, and we'll save our day. I love the EOM, end of message one, right here on the screen, and that allows you to be able to type a message in the subject line. If it's about 8 words or less, you can just write the message right in the subject line, put EOM at the end, and then that person knows that there's no body message. It's the body of the message is empty. They don't need to open the email at all. If they need to reply, they can just hit reply and reply to you. But there's no necessity for that. Either way, so those are in there. I love the subject line messages. Those are really, really fantastic. And in this one, in number 3, what he's really talking about is, or she has included a set of categories. So in the subject line, you put info, action, time sensitive, or low priority. And that way, people know this is just information, FYI. This needs action associated with it. Great. This is time sensitive. I should open up this before I open up another email message from you. And this is low priority. I can deal with it whenever I want. Quash open-ended questions, slash the surplus CCs. Everybody talks about that. Tighten the thread, because some emails depend for their meaning on context, which means it's usually right to include the thread being responded to. But it's rare that a thread should extend to more than 3 emails. That's really true. Once it goes beyond that, it should probably be a phone call. So cut the conversation at that point and schedule a phone call, schedule a telephone conference, pick up the phone and talk to the person. That's when those things do. Attacking attachments, this person is talking specifically about graphics and logos in email signatures, which tend to, create all sorts of mayhem in emails. So don't use graphics or logos as attachments in emails. They create all sorts of problems, especially when you're using the Microsoft MAPI system. So there's POP, IMAP, and MAPI. The MAPI system and some of the MIME emails, not to get technical, but those things tend to cause all sorts of ruckus for people. The next one is basically going on what I was talking about with the subject abbreviations. And the subject abbreviations here that this person is talking about are EOM and NNTR, which means no need to respond. I use no response necessary, but you can use NNTR or NRN, and those acronyms really, really help if you let people know about them. So what I would do is I would take all the ones that you want to use here in this list, and I would send an email to everyone you know and say, here goes all of the abbreviations that I'm going to use. Print them out, put them in front of your computer, and from now on, when I send them, you can go ahead and read those particular messages and know that those abbreviations stand. Getting people aware of them, the more people that know about them, the more that it's widespread adopted, the better people will be at being able to communicate quickly and efficiently in email without doing that. Number 9 is cut contentless responses. The ones like, thanks, great, wonderful. All of those 1-word or 2-word responses are not necessary, which is why I tend to use the NRN, no response necessary, or NNTR, to tell people, please, don't reply, I get it. You just took my time to read an email message that, is polite of you, but we're moving things along. And number 10, this person in the email charter says, spend less time doing email, and that way we all get less email. So decide not to send as many email messages, and we'll do it. Either way, emailcharter.org is a fantastic tool. Another one that I really like is this one, and it's the 5 sentences. So if you go to 5.sentences, it's basically sentenc.es. So 5 sentences. Go to that website. It's a personal policy about email, and it says that regardless of the recipient or subject, the email messages will be 5 sentences or less, okay? And so it's the idea of limiting the size of your email messages to be able to overcome the overflow of email, okay? And so this website also has the really cool tool of having both 5 sentences, 4 sentences, 3 sentences, and 2 sentences. You can see here they have the policies right here in each of these. And then you can actually add this, they set up for you this wonderful little email signature that says, why is this email 5 sentences or less? The answer is 5 sentences, the website. And so people are taken here to this page, and now they understand why you're only using 5 sentences or 4 sentences or 3 sentences or 2 sentences, okay? And it can really cut down on the number of email messages. I'm very much guilty of sending very long email messages, trying to provide more information than not. And so adopting something like this would be wonderful for me. Maybe I'll do 7 sentences as opposed to 5 sentences. But the point being is that you can also institute this policy within the office, and that can be very helpful to everybody in terms of being able to limit the amount of email messages to a minimum, okay? So those are the 7. Just to recap, if you want to get to inbox 0, you really need to stop the influx. You need to be able to stop the source of most of the majority of the email messages that are coming in. So how can you do that? You're going to do that through unsubscribing from things, and then, of course, dealing with your email both responsibly and responsibly, which means changing the communication culture, okay? So you need to change the communication culture, which will help stop some of the influx. It will help you manage your email flow better, to be responsive and responsible with email, and that will take you to that. I'll leave you with this, and then I'll take questions. This is from the famous American journalist Judith Martin. She says, for email, the old postcard rule applies. Nobody else is supposed to read your postcards, but you'd be a fool if you wrote anything private on one. So with that, here goes the resources for today's webinar. You can go ahead to that link, and that will take you to a document where I've posted all of the links that I've talked about today, and then some additional materials that I think would be helpful if you want to do a deep dive into email inbox zero, as well as some of these other tools that we talked about to be able to manage email influx, so on and so forth. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tracy. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so I'm happy to stay here and answer any questions about email that you might have.
Well, Ray, you had a really good question, and I inadvertently just deleted it instead of unmuting myself. So if the person that asked the question about the multiple devices, and basically the problem, to summarize, was she's got 3 different devices and email comes off each one, and yet when she deletes it, it's not getting deleted in every place, and so she's being overloaded with email. But if the person could re-ask that, that'd be great too, if I didn't get that quite right.
Sure. So if I get the gist of the question, this person has what's called POP message enabled. And so it depends on whether or not your email server or email hosting provider is set up to allow one of several different types of email services. When it comes to receiving email, you have incoming POP, meaning that you have a server where your email sits. Okay, so this is the sort of store and forward method. So once upon a time, back in the 1960s and 70s, when email was just a baby, when it was in its infancy, email, you would have 2 people on either end of the network, and they actually had to be both online at the same time to be able to send and receive email. Okay, so you would sit there, you would call the person and say, hey, I'm sitting at my computer and I'm ready to send the message, and then you'd hang up the phone and then you'd send your email message, and then they would receive it on the other end and then be able to reply. But only when you were online were you able to do that. Today, of course, we're in an asynchronous communication platform now with the Internet SMTP system, and so that allows you to be able to what we call the store and forward method. Basically, when someone sends an email message, it goes up to a server, it sits there, and then it forwards it to you on the receiving side when you go ahead and connect to your mail server. What POP does, which is what I'm presuming this particular person's email address is doing, is that you have your 3 devices, and what's happening is it's going up there and it's sending a message to say, are there any new messages? Yeah, okay, can you please send them? Then it sends a message back to your mail server and it says, but don't delete them. So POP allows you to be able to tell the service to not delete email address when it comes in. And that's a mechanism that you'll want to change from either, if you can, on all 3 devices, tell it, once I've downloaded it and I've read it, or once I've downloaded it and I've deleted it, I want you to delete it from the mail server so that it doesn't download on the other computer. That's not going to clean up all the problems, though, because if another one of the computers drags down email message and it shows up there, then you're not going to see it on your phone, for instance, or on another device. So POP is really an antiquated software, and you should really upgrade to the next type of software, which is called, or protocol, which is called IMAP. And what IMAP does is it basically synchronizes all of your email accounts and folders across the board. So if you delete an email address on one device, it deletes it on your other devices. If you open an email address on this device, all of them show that it's been opened. And if you go ahead and respond to it, that sent email shows up in all of them as well. So it goes into your sent folder in all of the devices. It basically keeps everything in synchronization. IMAP is a very great protocol, and you should probably go ahead and talk to your email service provider about upgrading if if it's not already a part of your email hosting package, to the IMAP service. And once you do that, you're just going to change a couple of pieces of criteria in your email, and then everything will just seamlessly synchronize.
Great, Ray. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay. We don't. Well, thank you all for participating today. Just a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar was recorded and it will be posted on the Virginia SBDC website under live webinars and recordings. Tomorrow you'll receive a follow-up email on this webinar, and there'll be an evaluation link in the email. Please help us to continue to improve our training by taking the time to complete the evaluation. If you'd like to do the evaluation now, I did post the link in the chat window, so you can go ahead and click on it and take that now. See you on April 3rd for Small Business Finance Management on the Web. Thank you.